Hello everyone, in this video we are going to discuss the tournament, the Tata Steel Chess India Rapid 2022, and total 10 players are playing this tournament in India. Shakhriyar, Mamedyarov, Arjun Legacy, Nihal Sarin, Gukesh, Northerbek Abdusattarov, Param Maksudlu, Wesley Vidit Gujarati, Hikaru Nakamura, one and only favorite, and Sethuraman. So it's a tournament of 10 players happening in India, and there are two formats, the Rapid and the Blitz. And today was the first day on 29th of November 2022, and total 3 games have been played today. And after the completion of 3 games, Shakhriyar Mamedyarov in the first place with the 3 points. And with the second place, we have Arjun Legacy with the 2 points, and so on. So in today's video, it's the most interesting thing is Shakhriyar Mamedyarov won all 3 games today. So it's going to be very interesting to check out those 3 games. How did he won it? How did he won those 3 games? Because I personally know Shakhriyar Mamedyarov playing style. He likes to play very aggressive. He doesn't basically believe in engines. He likes to play over the board chess, which actually makes his games very interesting. So it's going to be very fun to analyze those games. So let's check it out. So in the first round, we have Shakhriyar Mamedyarov versus Gukesh. Gukesh is having the white pieces and Mamedyarov is having the black pieces. So Gukesh with the white pieces in the first round starts out with 1d4. And the time control of the rapid format is 25 minutes plus 10-second increment. So d4 we have knight to f6 by Mamedyarov, c4 by Gukesh, e6, knight f3, bishop to b4, check the Bogo Indian, knight to d2 by white. And so in this position, there are many ways for white to continue the position. White can play bishop to d2 or knight to c3 or even knight to d2. But I believe bishop d2 or knight to d2 are the best move. If you want to keep the position simple, you can go for playing bishop to d2. If you want to just trade off the pieces and go to the end game, if you want a simple game, you can play bishop to d2. If you want something complex, you can play what Gukesh played, knight to d2. Playing a fighting game, d5 by black, e3, short castle, a3 asking the bishop whether he wants to capture the knight or whether he wants to go back. Bishop to e7. So in this position, if the bishop would have been on d2, I believe that black would have captured it. But as the knight is on d2, capturing the knight doesn't make any sense. You are simply, first of all, you are giving your opponent the bishop pair. And second, you are just getting rid of the knight, which is basically doing nothing on d2. So that's the reason black usually go back with the bishop on e7. It's a very standard line. b4, white trying to expand on the queen side, and here we have a5 by black, trying to punish white for his overextended queen side structure. And after a5, we have b5 by white, because black is already planning to capture the pawn on b4. And the interesting thing is white cannot capture it back because the rook is hanging on a1. So that's the reason we have b5. And if white even tries to capture the pawn, both the pawns are extremely weak, and the pawns can be a potential target for black to capture in the future. That's why b5 keeping the pawn structure very solid for white. And here we have c5 by Mamedyarov. Trying to open up the position, open up the center. As white's king is in the center, it's good for black to open up the center. We have n passant for white, and here we have b into c6. So the reason black captured with the pawn in this position at the place of knight is because if the pawn takes, it opens the scope for the bishop to go on e6. And I believe bishop on e6 would be doing a very good job. So we have bishop to e2 by Gukesh, knight to d7, short castle, and here black tries to play c5. Because white can play c5 at some point, though then black would be having the ideas to play e5. But like black pieces are all developed. He have already castles. His every piece is kind of developed, so it's completely fine to open up the position by playing c5. Bishop to b2, bishop to b7 by black. So the idea could be to capture the pawn on c4 and open up the bishop. Queen to c2, and here what I said happened. Knight d into c4, capturing the pawn. Knight into c4, rook to c8, putting the rook on the open, trying to put the rook on the same file as the queen, and the idea is to capture the pawn and try to put some pressure on the knight and the queen. So white tried to play rook to d1, also putting the same pressure and black put on the white queen. Bishop to d5 by black, stopping this sort of a pin, and yeah. So bishop to d5, centralizing the bishop. Queen to a4, knight to b6, knight into b6, queen into b6. The position is extremely fine. I believe black have already been able to equalize the position the moment black played c5. And yeah, the normal way to continue the position would be to play queen b5. And after queen b, bishop b5, the position is roughly equal. You can play c4 and the game goes on after bishop c3. All those who are thinking a rook b8, the bishop is trapped, nothing is happening because a4 and the position is equal-ish. So yeah, this could have been a normal scenario, but in Gukesh's game, he played the move bishop to c3. And I don't know what he missed, but after bishop to c3, he simply missed bishop to b3. Actually, I think he definitely has saw bishop b3. The idea of first of all playing bishop c3 was to simply attack the pawn on a5. And after bishop b3, he decides to capture the pawn on a5. And bishop into queen, bishop into queen. And I think that what he missed in the game is he missed bishop into rook. And after this, he simply an exchange down. And yeah, that's the story. So basically, he gave up an exchange which without any compensation. So we are simply knight to d5, hitting the bishop, takes. And if I simplify the position like this, so we basically, white is having the bishop and the pawn against a rook, which is not good enough to win the game or even draw the game. Black is having it's the end game now, so black is definitely having the huge type of advantage. Knight to d4, knight to c3, trying to eliminate the bishop, bishop to f3. So Gukesh wants to keep as many pieces as possible because whenever you are an exchange down or material-wise down, you should always try to keep the pieces on the board. e5 by black, hitting the knight, knight to f5, rook to b8, g4, check, trading off the rooks, and as I said, black just needs to trade off the pieces to win the game. The pawn is attacked, knight takes, and now the white is already only having the exchange for the rook, not even a pawn. So now knight to c4, knight here. So a couple of moves were played by both the players, and eventually after a couple of moves, over here, after playing on the 45th move, after playing rook to e4, white decides to resign the game. The reason is quite simple. The knight is attacked, the bishop is attacked. If you try to capture the knight, rook f4 check, the king move takes, the knight and the pawn is attacked. You move the knight to take, and you even lose this pawn. So nothing is happening. It's completely winning for black. So hence, Gukesh decides to resign on the 45th move after playing rook to e4, because if you try to move the knight, you lose the bishop. So this was the game in the first round where Mamedyarov beat Gukesh. So now it's time for us to look at the second game where Mamedyarov faced Sethuraman. So let's check it. So in the game between Mamedyarov versus Sethuraman, Shakhriyar is playing with the white pieces and Sethuraman is playing with the black pieces, and Mamedyarov begins with 1d4, d5, c4, c6, knight to c3, knight to f6, and here we have e3, the Slav. Usually in this position, there are many players who like to develop the dark square bishop to perhaps on f4 to g5. But in this position, Mamedyarov decides to play e3. And what's the idea of playing e3 in this particular setup is where white basically block the bishop on c1. In this particular scenario, white wants to develop the bishop to b2 by playing b3, bishop b2. So that's the idea. It's a completely fine opening, so don't judge it. So here we have e6, knight to f3, knight to d7, bishop to d3, d into c4, bishop into c4, b5, bishop to d3, bishop to b7, short castle a6, and so this is the opening, the semi-Slav defense. And the basic idea in this position is black wants to execute the move c5 and open up the position. And once the black is able to successfully implement the move c5, the position would be extremely fine for black. So that's the idea. If white wants to have an edge, he needs to chop the c5, or he needs to basically do something fast, or else after c5 the position is already equalized. So after a6 we have e4 by Mamedyarov trying to play in the center. c5 was though was still played in the game, and here we have d5. If you try to capture it, nothing is going to help you because after knight into c5, black is already having a very harmonious position. White is having the weakness on e4, the d3. That's not good enough, and even bishop e7 short castle would be good for black. So that's why white decides to push the pawn to d5, and as black king is in the center, Mamedyarov wants to open up the center and try to attack the black king. He wants to go all in, so we have c4 by Sethuraman in the game. If black tries to capture the pawn, we have e5, a very nice move hitting the knight. And if we went back with the knight, it doesn't make any sense because here we have a move like rook e1, bishop e7, and bishop f4. And the knight cannot move from the g8 square. If we play knight to h6, we have simply takes, and black king would be even afraid to castle on the king side, as there are lots of weaknesses. And yeah, so that's the reason e5 is a very strong move, hence black cannot capture. So we have c4, bishop c2, and queen to c7. Pawn takes by Mamedyarov, pawn takes, and it looks like an up pawn on e3 is weak. But black is fine actually. So we have knight to e2 by Mamedyarov. Not the best. In this position, he could have gone with the knight to d4, hitting the pawn on e6. And if black tries to implement the move e5, knight to e6, hitting the queen and the bishop. And the position is good for white, I would say, after queen c6. Even move like knight to d5 looks very interesting. You cannot capture the knight because you lose the queen. So it's very interesting, and if you take, here we simply e takes. You again cannot take because of knight c7 check. So there. But knight to e2 was played in the game, knight to c5, knight to d4 now. But after knight to d4, now here comes e5 on time. And you cannot play knight to e6 because the knight is already covering that square. And after knight f5, g6, knight to g3. Now Mamedyarov is actually having a bad position. And after knight to e6, because there is no direct plan for white. And like black is having very good squares. Like the e4 can be currently the target for black. I think bishop g7 or short castle, even bishop e7 short castle can be an idea. Or even rook d8 is coming in, hitting the queen. So b3 was played in the game. c3 was played by Sethuraman. Not opening up the c5, trying to push his pawn. He wants to play b4 and cement his pawn on c3, which is actually a good idea. So Mamedyarov chops it by playing a3, stopping a b4. Still b4 came by Sethuraman. Bishop d3, bishop to e7, a b4, bishop into b4, bishop to c4, hitting the knight. The knight came to f4, bishop into f4, ef4, knight to e2, hitting the pawn, rook to d8, queen to c1, knight into pawn, knight into f4. And I believe this position already looks very scary for black. The king's in the center, the king can no longer castle, rook to e1 is coming in. So basically, the game is completely complicated, but at the first glance, you are going to give the right answer by saying that white is already better because black king is in the center, the most vulnerable piece in the game. And the most important piece. So rook to d2 was played by Sethuraman, and here we have knight to e6. Actually, the best move was to capture the rook in this position because white is simply winning, because after knight takes, we simply have rook e1 check. And after move like king to d7, knight to d3, and the king is extremely weak. The white is going to soon chase the king, and it's nearly over. And if pawn takes, we simply have bishop to b5 check. Okay, so perhaps I'm not sure that Mamedyarov has saw this or not, and you basically lose the queen. That's the idea. So, but we simply have knight to e6. Perhaps Mamedyarov has missed it, or I'm not sure. So queen to c6 was played in the game. Bishop into pawn now. Not the best move. Queen to e1 was the best, putting pressure over here. And Yeah. Bishop into a6 equalized the game actually, but king to e7 once again a blunder. Queen into e6 was the best, and after bishop into b7, black is having the opportunity to castle, and the position is equalized. But once again, king to e7, the blunder move, knight to d4, now hitting the queen, queen move, bishop into takes, and now came the move. Rook to a7, and the queen is simply attacked. You need to capture the queen, a rook, or else there is no other option left. Now came the move, knight to c6 by Mamedyarov, and after playing knight to c6 on the move number 32, Sethuraman decides to resign the game because he simply lost the queen now. It's a check and it's a fork. The game is over. So this was the second game where Shakhriyar Mamedyarov kind of played a very practical game. He tried to keep the king in the center, and though the engineer was saying that black is winning, but black, as I told you, that he likes to play the practical chess, aggressive chess, he won the game. So now it's time to discuss the third game where Mamedyarov played against Wesley. So let's check it out. So in the third game, Mamedyarov is playing with the black pieces against Wesley. So the global chess championship winner, Wesley, so is playing with the white pieces and starts out the game with the 1d4. Knight to f6 again by Mamedyarov, knight to f3, e6, c4, the queen's gambit, bishop to b4 check, again the Burgundian in the board, knight to d2. And after knight to d2, d5, queen to a4 check, the bishop is attacked and the king is attacked, so black is forced to play knight to c6 to stop the check and also defend the bishop. a3, bishop to e7, as I discussed in the first game, capturing the knight is a bad move. You need to go back. e3 is the move played in the game, and here we have e5. The idea could be to first of all expand on the queen side, and second to stop the move the b4. Perhaps after playing the first game, Mamedyarov didn't like the idea of playing b4, so he wanted to stop the idea by playing a5 eventually. But still, b4 came into the game. Pawn into c4, knight into c4. Like, if you capture the bishop, it's actually extremely fine. You want to castle, you develop your piece by capturing a pawn. It's actually completely safe for white, and the position is normal. The black cannot capture the b4 pawn because he's losing the rook, but he captured with the knight. And here's my moment. It's your moment actually. Here's Mamedyarov moment. What are you going to play with the black piece in this position? You are in Shakhriyar Mamedyarov shoes. Feel free to pause the video and try to find the best move played by black in this position. Okay, so all those who have came up with the move, the brilliant move, the what do I say? b5, hitting the queen and the knight. And white is forced to capture the pawn on b5. White is having no other option left. And now comes the move bishop to d7. And it looks like what's happening? Black simply blundered a pawn or what? But actually, if you think deeply, you are going to realize the queen is actually having no good place to go. And black is already preparing to capture the b4 pawn, even d4 pawn, anything can be captured hitting the queen. So for example, if white goes back with queen a4 queen a4, what's happening? Now knight into d4. The queen is attacked and black even captured a pawn. So if you try to stop the pawn, you will lose again a pawn. And if you try to go back with queen to d1, knight into f3 check. I'm not sure after queen into f3, a into b4 is coming in. So eventually it's lost for white. So queen to g5 was played in the game. If white tries to capture the pawn on ba5, now comes knight to b4. Once again, an excellent move. And you cannot capture the knight because the bishop is protecting it, the queen is attacked. And if you try to move the queen, knight c2 check, and you lose the rook, and the game is over. So basically, you need to give up the queen, but eventually it's losing for white now. So what happened in the game is queen to g5 was played by Wesley. A into b4, queen into g7, which was again a blend of the best move in this position. Would have been to play bishop to d3, ignoring this pawn. Ignoring that black have basically captured the pawn, and the position is fine for white. Once white castle, the position is extremely fine. If I count the material in this position, white is having 6 pawns and black is having also 6 pawns. So it should be fine after black castles. The position is extremely fine and both the players can continue the game. But what happened in this, Wesley became greedy and he went for capturing the pawn on g7, hitting the rook and breaking the castle of black. Rook to g8, queen h6, b into a3. And I believe now some critical checks are going to come in the position. Bishop to e2 was played in the game. If white tries to go for capturing the pawn on a3 in this position, here the best move is to play bishop to f8, though very hard to find. And you basically cannot capture the bishop because you lose the rook and the game is over. So if you try to move the queen, for example on h4, now comes rook g4, and if queen h3, e5, and it's becoming very scary, and it's completely winning for black actually. So yeah. So bishop to e2 was played, and now comes rook into g2. Knight to e5 was played in the game. Knight into e5, knight into e5, rook to g8, and this position is completely winning for black. Black is having 5 pawns, white is having 4 pawns. Both the kings are in the center, but white king is much weaker. It looks like the position is extremely complicated, but let's see how the game went. Bishop to f3 was played. It looks a very natural move. You are hitting the rook, putting your piece onto a nice square. Here comes queen to b8. A brilliant move by Mamedyarov. Actually, this was a brilliant move considered by chess.com. The reason is quite simple. If white tries to capture the rook, queen into a8, hitting the rook. If you try to play rook f1 trying to defend it, bishop b4 check, bishop d2, bishop into d2, king into d2, queen f5 check, and eventually white sooner or later is going to get checkmated. It's nearly open. It's nearly over for white. Like if king e2, bishop to b5 check. It's nearly over. So, so e4 was played in the game. Now queen to b3. The idea is very simple. Black wants to play queen c3 and capture the rook. Queen to e3 was played. Bishop to b4 check. Bishop d2. Queen to b2 now. Taking advantage of the a3 pawn now. Knight into d2 d7 was played. Knight into d7. Bishop into, and now queen into rook. Because you can't really defend the rook because you can't castle because the rook is covering the g1 square. Okay, if the pawn would have been on g2, I believe after short castle the position would have been definitely fine. But he lost the rook. Came incoming check. c5 now, good move. Pawn push. Sorry for that. So after c5, the pawn and the bishop is attacked, and if you capture the pawn in this position, rook to b8 is coming in. I'm not sure. Perhaps the idea could be to play knight to e5. It's still winning, and if you capture with the bishop, I believe if I trade everything, it's still winning for black. Okay, because black is simply an exchange up. So what happened in the game is e5 was played, hitting the rook. Rook to b8 now hitting the bishop. Bishop to c3 takes. Pawn takes, bishop takes, rook to b3, and white is definitely having the bishop pair, but not in this position. It's not working. So eventually, after a couple of moves, after playing rook to a5 on the move number 35, Wesley decides to resign the game. The reason is quite simple. Rook f5, a very interesting finish. You cannot capture the rook because of check and takes, and the pawn is going to queen after push, knight to b3, and black can make a queen. And if white tries to move, okay, the rook have to capture it because there is no other square for the white rook. So that's it. These were 3 games played by Mamedyarov in the first day of the rapid event of the Tata Steel. So he won all the 3 games. So currently Mamedyarov is leading the tournament. It's going to be interesting to watch the second day as well. I'm going to come up with these interesting videos like this. So if you guys like the video and the analysis of the game, then make sure to like the video, share this video with your friends, and if you're new to our channel, then make sure to subscribe to our channel because we are going to come up with these interesting videos like this. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching OneShot Chess.